Hi all. So good evening and welcome back to the session in world economy. So today we are going to elaborate on the newly industrialized countries and less developed countries. So probably you may have heard of these terms as NICs and LDCs. Here in this lesson we are going to elaborate on understanding the define and the concept of NICs known as NICs, newly industrialized countries, and characteristics of NICs, and to see the reasons for the growth of NICs and evaluate of the importance on the reinvestments of domestic savings and expansion of the economical activities, to see what are the issues faced by the industrialized countries, as well as understand the concepts of less developed economies, as well as to identify the main characteristics of LDCs, and to see what are the issues faced by the LDCs at the moment. Also in this lesson we are going to elaborate on some other matter as well, that is the transnational corporations and the impact by the transnational corporations over the newly industrialized countries as well as the less developed countries. Right, so fine, we'll move to the first slide of this session. So we'll first get to know about the newly industrialized country. What do you mean by a newly industrialized country? NICs. So it's basically a country which has already moved from its agricultural based economy into more industrialized, or let's say the urbanized economy. So previously, as we all know, when we did the direct production for the let's say the production for the ultimate consumption of the a family, let's say, or let's say the production for their own consumption has changed to the indirect production, that is called the people will tend to produce some more, or let's say generate surpluses in order to consume by the others as well, right? So initially they transferred their ownerships, or let's say they sold them based on the quantities. So we called it as the barter system, where they have exchanged their good to good or service to service base, and after that has been evolved to an extent of transactions, as the transfer the ownership of something based on the monetary value. So at present we use the currencies as the base, right? So in that case, let's say now previously we had the agricultural based economy, and with the industrialization, with the involvement of the technology, with the development of the industrialization, that has been moved from the agricultural economy to the industrial economy, or let's say the urban economies. So that is what we know as the countries, whatever they moved from the agricultural based economy to an industrial economy, is known as the newly industrialized country. So in the country, basically these countries are located in the mid of, whenever we are comparing all these countries with the other countries in the rest of the world, so these countries can be listed in between the developed countries, or let's say highly or well developed countries, as well as the countries which are developing for the moment. And also at the same time we can give some examples like China, India, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, South Africa, Turkey, Brazil and Mexico as the newly industrialized countries. And also newly industrialized countries are also known as the advanced developing countries, because these are, as I told you earlier, these are listed in between the developed countries as well as the let's say less developed, or let's say the developing countries, right? So so that is why we call them as the advanced developing countries. So moving to the characteristics of this NICs known as the newly industrialized countries, we have economic growth and growth in productivity. Now previously, as I told you earlier, the people were producing their productions for their self-satisfaction, or let's say that is what we call as the direct production, right? So that is for the domestic consumption. But in recent times we see most of the people are producing some of surpluses, even though they don't want them. So they produce because of to satisfy the others' requirements. So which means that now we are in industrialized economies, and we try to generate indirect production. So in that case, economic growth and growth in productivity can be seen in these newly industrialized countries. Why is that? Because basically when it comes to the newly industrialized countries, the people are using technology, innovation and things like that to do their tasks, or let's say to do their trade, right? In that case, they always care about the much improvements on the efficiency, effectiveness as well as the productivity of their work. So in that case, you can see a bit of growth in the productivity in the newly industrialized countries. And then quick industrialization. Now after the Second World War of the world, we can see the people were tend to use some of technological, mechanical equipments and things, machineries especially, to make their tasks easier, right? To facilitate their tasks with very easy methodologies. So they used some, actually for now, actually of course they are using some of the technological equipments in their production, or it might be service sectors, right? So that is what you call as quick industrialization. And they try to always, in newly industrialized countries, they always use some of the newest technologies. They keep updating with the technology, and they use the technology and industrialization effect into their businesses. And the third one is export oriented production. Now, not like the domestic economies, they always tend to produce the productions based to focus on exporting them to the foreign countries. Now if you're having a domestic economy, but still the people are tend to produce their productions to the export oriented manner. They try to send them to the other countries and gain some of the money from the other countries. So that is what you call as the export earnings, right, or export income. Okay. And investment through domestic savings. Now the speciality of these countries are like newly industrialized countries are always tend to omit or to restrict some of the unwanted imports into their countries, as they believe that they are losing some of their the values, or let's say their own money by doing imports, unnecessary imports especially. So with that, they have they are producing their whatever the things that they want inside the economy as well. They're trying to much improve their exports and to expand their, or to let's say to improve their flow of export incomes. Through getting an export income, they try to invest them and to reinvest them and to generate some savings in the country in the macro aspects. So we'll discuss it about later, right? And also at the same time, the very important characteristics of newly industrialized country is the urbanization. The people are trying to move from the villages to the urban area. That is called urbanization. As well as they do develop their villages with the facilities which are available in the urbanized society. So that is what you call as urbanization. It can be the development of the infrastructure. It can be the expansion of the operations into the villages. Especially when it comes to the industrialization, you can see most of the the villages are having factories, the production firms, and also some of the MNCs have been started in some of the the rural areas, as well as they are expanding their operations from the urban areas to the rural areas. So those are the effects of urbanization. And with that, they need, they develop their transportation, they develop their telecommunication, they develop their whatever the infrastructure for the standardization of the living standards, right? These are the things that you can see. And it's an attached thing, improvements of standards of living. So with all these urbanization, with the development of the industrial the practices and things like that, people tend to uplift, or let's say people tend to gain and also to improve their standards of living, right? It will automatically happens when the urbanization and things like reinvestments, things like economical injections, expansions are happening. And also, next thing is development of sectors of production. Now, in all aspects, the countries like newly industrialized countries, they always tend to expand or to develop their sectors of production in the means of it can be generating their own products into their domestic markets, as well as basically to export orientated production. Right, so we'll move further. Now, this is the transformation process which a country can gain through, the transformation, the series of, the times, the period of time where they transform that particular economy from the traditional society to an export orientated industry. See, at the very first time, see the growth rate. Actually, they were trying to, in the very basic case, here you can see in the first stage, the thinking pattern was traditional society, and it has been uplifted to a sort of import substitution industry, and that has been further improved to export orientated industry. So let's get to know about these three. So basically, the transformation process is happening through the traditional society to import substitution industry and then to the export oriented industry. So how these are happening? So let's say traditional society is basically a farming economy, mostly dependent over the imported goods, and the people had a limited income, and the most of them were poor. Because why? The people are having lands, the people are having basically the farmer based income sources, and the main income generation is based on farming, and they do the direct production for themselves, and if there's an excess they try to exchange with the others. But with that they don't have any feasibility, or let's say any possibility of expanding their income, because they are not much elaborated on improving their efficiency and effectiveness of their operations, as well as they don't have the resources. In that case, mostly they other than the products that they make in their domestic economy, they always try to import some of the productions whatever they need for their other requirements from the outside of the country. So that, which means that they try to import some products from the outside. So in that case as well, you will lose so much of money from your domestic economy. But when it comes to the development of the thought of import substitution industry, where you try to develop whatever the goods that you import for now in your particular domestic economy, so you try to avoid some of the unnecessary imports, right? The economies at this point make so many restrictions and discourage the imports and try to manufacture substitutions for the imports within the economy itself. In that case, you expanded your thinking pattern, as well as you expanded your economical capacity by investing in some sort of the manufacturing process and things like that, especially in the capital equipments like machinery and things like that, the processes as well. So you developed it into some extent. Then the export oriented industry, in the sense that you merely trying to develop or generate the flow of production in order to export them and to gain the export income. See, once the established domestic industries are grown and the production will be exported to the world at large, the economies then earn much of export income, and the residuals of the same will earn higher per capita income. What do you mean by per capita income? Or let's say during a particular period of a time, if an economy does a sort of a production, so the whole value of that particular production divided by its mid-year population is where you get the per capita income, which means how much a proportion is owned by a person in that particular economy. That is the ratio. So in that case, you can see by earning more of the export income, you can expand your economy through getting income. You can regenerate your whatever the funds, and you can do the reinvestments. I will show how to do it, right? So you will expand your economy, right? That is how the transformation process happening through ages and years. Right, we'll move further. Now, to say the reasons for industrialization is very important, because why? Previously, the people were just like trying to do the direct production, and they were not much bother about the effectiveness, efficiency, or the productivity. But when it comes to the industrialization, of course, people tend to use the machineries and new technology and innovations to their production. Thereby, they were trying to actually, today's also they are trying to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of their productions, right? So the reasons for industrialization is basically, we can see some of the facts like the natural resources, growing workforce, innovation and technological development, that is development happening in the technology, that is how you get the innovations, as well as the governmental influences over the industrialization, and improvements of transportation and infrastructure, and indirect production, sorry. So when it comes to natural resources, based on the resource that you have, if you can remember when we were describing about the comparative advantage and things like that, we discussed about the countries or the economies, those who are having the domestic economical practices where they do production based on the resources that they have. As an example, let's say if a country is having a production factor A than the production factor B, they do consider about a production which can be done through the production factor A. So they try to transport, or let's say they try to export some of the excess commodities to the other countries and gain some of the export income to their countries. Now the natural resources, let's say the resource priorities are being affected to become the industrialization countries, or let's say to become industrialization. And then the next one is the growing workforce. Now when the workforce is high, let's say the efficiency as well as the competencies of the workforce is high, so then you have to employ them, or to say that to deploy them in a workable way, you must be industrialized, right? Because if you don't have sufficient employment opportunities for the growing workforce, your total the workforce, or let's say the workforce, will be idle. So because of that, you must need to develop the things into the industrialization way, and develop some of ventures in order to utilize them utilize the existing workforce in a proper way. And also, with the improvements of the technological development, with the improvements of technological applications into the productions and services, you had to industrialize, right? And also, as a result of using these technological development into the industry, innovation is a fact that has been grown throughout the years. And innovation always creates a flow of it can be an idea, it can be a product, it can be a service, right? Anyhow, that creates, or that generates, the economical efficiency and effectiveness of operations. Then governmental influences over the industrialization. Now some of the governments were like, especially the government's main focus is the social capital, or let's say the social welfare. But when it comes to the government imposes, let's say as an example, the subsidies, taxes, especially the taxes are imposed, if you can remember, that the taxes are imposed to discourage some of the unnecessary imports, where that is the main income of a government. But of course, at the same time, they do provide some of the subsidies and the tax exemptions for their exports, where to encourage them, as well as they do provide subsidies for their industries to optimize their operations through using the subsidies. So governmental influences, some of the policy decisions, some of the especially the decisions that are taken by the government, will be affecting over the industrialization. And also improvements of transportation and other infrastructure. So whenever the transportation, telecommunication, other infrastructure are developed, your country will automatically industrialized. Then the indirect production. Now with the indirect production, with the need of the efficiency. Now people, those who live in this particular domestic economy, they will buy some sort of a proportion from your production, but other than that, you will be having a surplus, right? In that case, the indirect production practices would tend to export your productions as well as, to become you industrialized in a way, right? So then we'll see how these things are happening. Now remember, here you have the domestic economy and here you have the foreign economy. So this is your domestic margin, or let's say this is your country limits. So in that case, at first you have, let's get a British example, that is GBP 5000 with you, that is your the sum which is available in your particular hypothetical economy. At the same time, you do an excess sort of a production and try to export them into another country, right? This is what you known as the effect of the reinvestment of domestic income. I will show you how to do it. Now in this case, the domestic economy will produce some of the commodities and they try to export them to another foreign economy. So the foreign economy will buy these things, and at the same time the foreign economy will pay you a sum of let's say I have already taken the ratio of 1 GBP as 0.8 US dollars. So probably we'll say this UK government, or let's say the UK economy is exporting some of the productions to the US economy. So US economy will pay you a sum. So that is almost like 6,000 GBP, USD, 7,500 USD or 6,000 GBP, right? In this case, you will gain a flow of let's say the export income of 6,000 GBP. So as a result of that, you will inject some of the money to your domestic economy, which was 5,000 GBP, and now it's almost like 11,000 GBP, which is an inflow. So from that you can reinvest another 3,000 to the domestic economy, which will equal to your capacity that you have invested in your domestic economy to 8,000 rupees, including this 5,000. So that is how you can use your flow of income and use your own funds internally into your domestic economy, and that is how you can expand your economy in the means of reinvestment, right? We'll move further. Now, what are the issues faced by the industrialized economies? Now basically we can see now industrialization is something like, you become globalization with the effect, right? So you can see the issues which are faced. There are actually, of course, the unfavorable and favorable occurrences, or let's say the favorable and unfavorable issues. Basically, first let's get to know about the favorable issues faced by the industrialized economies. The growth of the industry has resulted in larger scale production. Of course, that is how the larger scales of production of goods which are available to the consumer at much cheaper rates. So now here we are referring to the economies of scale. Now when the production is at a massive or large proportion, you can see the per unit production cost will be coming lesser. In that case, you can reduce your market price and eventually the consumers can buy them at a market at a cheaper rate. So that will be a good facet, or let's say it's a good effect of being industrialized, where you have much effective sort of production, right? That has been resulted in larger scale production, of course. And also if you are having a larger scale, you can the excess of production you can export them to another country and gain more money, right? And at the same time, for the domestic country, you have the products available at much a cheaper price. So you don't want to import them from a foreign country, and also you will not lose your domestic currency as a result of unnecessary imports. Then the second one is there's a saving of time and labor. Of course, you can see with the industrialization, I told you about using the machineries and things like that, the innovation and the technology into the industry. So you can save the unnecessary time that you wasted, and as well as your human capital, or let's say them as labor. And considerable rise in standard of living of the people, as we discussed. That is happening through industrialized economies. And also a number of substitutes in consumer goods are available, because why? Rather you import, you have the productions available in your country, and the customers get wide varieties of choices. Now the consumers will be having a choice of between the wide varieties, because there are so many productions available from your country, and there are means of control and check the colossal wastages of human energy that can be used otherwise. There are means to control and check, because with the industrialization there will be so many opportunities available for the workforce, so that you can the countries can decide on their human capital, and they can use their human energy, human brains, the competencies, everything in a way which will create them a flow of effective efficiency and effectiveness. Then industrialization creates new job opportunities, leading to a removal of poverty to a greater extent. The thing is, actually, if you are industrialized country, then definitely you will create some of thousands of job opportunities to your domestics, and that will remove the poverty from your society. That will create a flow of income to all. The industrialization has also resulted in the development of the new modes of transportation, making the quick export and import possible. Now, as an example, let's say the air cargoes and things like that, they've been developed because of the industrialization. And with the industrialization, the world has become a global place where it's a sort of a small place where you can deal within seconds with the the right of the corner of the the other corner of the world, which is very easy because you have developed technology, telecommunication, you have the transportation. So with that, it's like a global village. So industrialized economies are much better for the the betterment of the world, right? So then we'll move to the bad facet, or let's say that is the dark facet of the industrialized countries. So through the industrialization, what is happening in sense, pollution in the natural resources. So most of the natural resources are polluted with all these industrialization because as effect of industrialization. And unhealthy conditions. Now with the we also it's much depreciated with the quality of the life, in the means of people are getting some of the diseases, and also there are some sort of unbearable workloads. They are losing the work-life balance, as well as they have to sacrifice their happiness with the human the families and things like that. And with the industrialized conditions, the human are being converted as machineries, so that those are like unhealthy health practices are there. And also in some circumstances we have seen with the industrialization, some of the exploitation practices are also going. And also in the previous cases where we met with some of the child labor practices, where the children have been used as the labor. And also with the exploitation of all these labor practices, the poorer are become the poor are become the poorer, because that is like almost like it will create a bad surrounding to the poorer, because it's almost like exploiting their effective labor at a cheaper rates. And also the gradual displacement of manpower in the industries is ultimately leading to an unemployment, with the replacement of machineries for so many things or tasks which are being done by the people. So eventually the manpower will be neglected, as well as the manpower the neglecting of the manpower will create the unemployment, and that will increase the poverty rate of a particular country. And also with some of the capitalistic ethics is craving for more and more money seems dominate to influence millions of people. The grave uncertainties in the money market sometimes bring misfortunes for the common people. And also inflation sets in the value of money goes down. In some cases with the inflations, some of the money values goes down. And also some of the newly industrialized practices are harmful to the domestic what you call as the let's say the home cottages, or let's say the cottage industries. or let's say the small and medium term domestic enterprises of that particular country, and gradually they are becoming disappear. So these are the threats, or these are the dark facets of the industrializing economies. And then moving to the less developed country. What do you mean by a less developed country? So far we discussed about the newly industrialized countries, and now we are moving to the less developed countries. By looking at this picture, you can see it's totally not developed, or let's say those are like almost like not urbanized, but those are like disorganized, as well as those are like merely not urbanized. The quality of the lives are very poor, and they are using some of the old technologies, old thing for their for their industries. So basically the developing countries or less developed countries are basically the developing countries that, according to the United Nations, UN, exhibit the lowest indicators of socio-economic development with the lowest human development index rating of all countries in the world. Now, whenever we are comparing the less developed countries with the rest of the parts of the world, we can see they are the lowest indicators on socio-economic development as well as the human development indexes. Now, a country that does not have a lot of industry activities and where the people have low incomes are known as the less developed countries. Moving to the characteristics of LDCs or less development countries, we can see now, as in the picture, you can see the poverty in that picture, right? Low GDP per capita, in the sense that is low gross domestic product per capita. If you divide the gross domestic product of a particular economy during a particular period of a time by its mid-years population, the mid-years population will get a sort of a penny types of a very small proportion of per capita income. So with that you can see anyway that is not industrialized, they don't have much of production, and those are not good economies to live. So because of that, as a result of that, they don't have the money, sufficient money to spend over their whatever the necessities, as well as because of that you can see the high levels of poverty as we depicted in the second point. And also they have the much dependence over the agricultural economies, but as I told you, in the sort of traditional economies, since they are attached to the agricultural economics, you can see those are like they are very primary in satisfying their needs, and they always try to import things from the outside of their country to satisfy their other needs and wants. In that case, they will lose their money from that particular economy, which will be considered as a leakage from the economy, and that will affect to create a further poverty in the economy. And also high rates of population growth. Now in the LDCs, the less developed countries, you can see higher levels of population. The population growth is happening, and also day by day it's growing. Right, there are no any the control over the population because those are less developed and those are less disorganized countries. And the low levels of productivity, you can see the productivity is very low, and high levels of unemployment. Now since they have not industrialized, or since they don't have the capacity to become industrialized, so they are having more unemployment in their economies. And also the underemployment is also there, which means that they don't have the jobs to survive themselves, which means that they don't have the employment opportunities, as well as they don't have sufficient employment opportunities which are relevant to their capacity of let's say the exposure, because of their capacity of education. They don't have much education as well, so because of that they are experiencing with unemployment and unemployment. Right, furthermore, now these are the problems faced by the less developed countries. As I told you, the population growth, there's no control over the population, so because of that, population growth has become a very very important, but it's a very big problem for them in the LDCs, and also shortage of resource capital. Now they don't have much resources to be deployed in their production, or let's say in their manufacturing, or can be in their trades, whatever. And also scarce of human capital, because they don't have the much improved human resources, where they have the competencies there, where they don't have the education, where they don't have the exposure, right? So with that, they don't have the human capital to be deployed. And also, as you saw in the first picture, they have in the poor infrastructure. They use old types of technologies to do their transportation, telecommunication, everything. So because of that, they have the poor infrastructure. That has, that is one aspect of problems actually they faced by the LDCs. Right, we'll move further. Now the transnational, now with the rising of the transnational corporations in the world, that has been given a very big impact over these newly industrialized economies, as well as the less developed economies as well. Now what are you mean by the TNCs, or known as the transnational corporations? A transnational corporation is a huge company that does business in several countries. Of course, I'm sure, because you will get a sort of a confusion between TNCs and MNCs, as MNCs are also involved in these country operations, right? But basically, the difference is that MNC usually has the investment in other countries, but do not coordinate product offering. But transnational companies are also do the investments, plus they also do product offerings in their foreign countries. So that is the difference between the TNC and MNC. MNC is not basically product offering their products in the other countries, but TNC does. Right. So coming transnational corporations into these two economies. So what is the impact, or what are the impacts over these? So impact by the transnational companies on the newly industrialized countries and LDCs. So there are so many both positive and negative facets. I will look into that. In the means of investments, of course, it's better that the transnational companies are coming to their economies, as in the newly industrialized countries as well. They, through doing an investment, they do economical injections where they can expand their economies. The host country can expand their economies through getting a TNC involved with their the particular economy. At the same time, some of the TNCs might use their natural resources, some of the TNCs might use their resources inside the country, so because of that it will be a negative impact as well. When it comes to the LDCs, the less developed countries, it's a good way, because why? As an investment, they will inject some of the money to their country and try to expand the economy in the means of the currencies, or let's say the investment. So the particular country, the less developed country, will receive so much of money as a result of the investment by the transnational corporation. Then the second one is the employment generation. Now in the means of employment generation for both the countries, it's better that the transnational companies are coming, because why? They try to develop some of the new employment opportunities to the host country people, and the host country will create a flow of income through giving their labor, or let's say by getting employment opportunities in those companies. But at the same time, some of the TNCs are affecting all the economies badly, in the means of though they are creating the job employments, or let's say the employment opportunities, but still making the poor payments to their it's like the practice of labor exploitation. So that will negatively affect on the economies as well. Because as an example, let's say if you look at a expansion of some of TNCs, like it's more into the let's say let's assume that one of the TNCs has opened up a packaging plant in a less development country somewhere in the world, and if they ask to provide, let's say as a result of the TNC, they will create some of the employment opportunities to their the people, those who are in that particular country. So though they worked hard, but of course with the availability of the the pool or the workforce is larger, since since of the large workforce, so they have enough types of enough quantity of labor, so that the labor will be cheaper, right? As a result of that, you will it will be good that they provide you the employment opportunities, but of course uh, at the same time the bad facet of the TNCs are coming to the countries, in the sense though they generate the opportunities, but still they may, in some cases they may exploit your labor. And also in the means of technology, that is a very good thing, because when it comes to the technological expansion, it's good for the countries. But in the means of technological expansions, there must be, there can be some of the bad facets, like you know technological expansions may be resulted in, again in the areas of the pollutions, as well as some of the unfavorable situations or circumstances. In the means of transport and infrastructure, of course it's good that, if you can remember, in when the Britons were ruling the country, like Sri Lanka, we got the transportation systems in Sri Lanka. So like that, if some economy is getting a transnational company into it, so definitely the transportation, especially when the transnational companies are coming, they are coming just like the investment zones, right? Industrial zones. So because of that, you will get so much of, the countries will get so much of transportation and infrastructure facilities with them, as a result of coming transnational companies into that particular economy. But at the same time, that will create that will create a flow of dislocating the people from the rural areas to the urban area, which is a good one. But of course, at the same time, they will lose their lands and things like that. And in the means of urbanization and quality of life of the nation, of the host country, it's happening. Urbanization is a part of industrialization. So when the transnational transnational corporations are located in a particular economy, so definitely it's happening. Urbanization is going to urbanization will happen. And also at the same time, the quality of the workforce or the quality of the nation will rise as a result of that. So thank you very much. Hope you guys enjoyed the session. Thank you for being on time.